Okay, fantastic. It's great to be back this week. I have a very fascinating one of the very fascinating South Africans here. He is an activist. One of the most passionate activists I know, that is the Wayne Duvenage. He's the CEO of OUTA. Wayne, what does OUTA stand for?
Organization Undoing Tax Abuse. But what it really stands for, that's the acronym. What OUTA stands for is accountability when it comes to the wasteful and abusive of power around tax spending our taxpayers' money, the country's fiscus, and then policies that just don't make sense, decisions and maladministration that really make this country inefficient. We need to engage with the authorities and hold them to account, hold their feet to the fire, expose the rot. And obviously, the whole Zuma era and state capture is where we spent a lot of time growing this brand, but it doesn't stop there. It just is endless. And as you know, we've got the local elections coming in. Local government is broken as a result of maladministration and corruption. So that's our game. We play in that space. We'd love to try and get to everything we can't. We're a team of 42 passionate, professional people that manage a number of projects, and there's just so much that's wrong, but our work is having an impact. Yeah.
Organization and doing tax abuse. And so far, since you've been doing this work, what are you finding in terms of, are we as South Africans, or I should say our government, is it smart on tax use? Are they abusing it? What do you find? Because to me, it looks like there's so much that's going on in terms of corruption, misuse of funds, and so on. But what do you find on the ground?
Well, on the ground, I think we have a government that is out of touch with the needs of society, of the people. More people have gone into poverty than out of it in the last 10 years or so. And that's sad because, we're now nearing 30 years of democracy. We punch well below our weight as a country. Our prosperity should be so much higher. And yet it isn't. Our education levels are dropping. Our health systems are dropping. Security. Other countries in Africa, developing countries, are overtaking us. If you look at Kenya, they've got an electric vehicle policy already. We don't even have one. So we used to be this powerhouse. We used to be this country 20 years ago that was on the road and on the journey to greatness and prosperity and education and employment. Was growing. We were on the right direction. The trajectory has just changed, and that's changed as a result of government officials who are in it for themselves. They are not in it for the people, so they waste money. They allow corrupt people to do business with them, and this is permeated right through to local government. So we pay 2 to 3 to 4 times what we should do for a new road, for a new bridge, for a pipeline, for sewage systems to be fed into indigenous areas so we can upgrade indigenous areas. A quarter of the money that is allocated by Treasury to electrify indigenous areas only gets to where it should. 3/4 is lost, it's wasted. And this is what we've got to fix in this country. We've got to make sure that our ministers and the departments within government are working for the people, and they're not. And they're working for themselves, and they're working for their cronies, their friends, and their families. And the whole process around BEE and empowerment and transformation has been lost as a result of a government that has just not got at its core the people. Everything should be around, is this decision we're making in the best interests of society? And if it isn't, they shouldn't be doing it. And they're not even asking that question. You can see it in their actions.
Yeah. To me, you are explaining a very dire situation. You wrote on the 7th of this month, you wrote an article that was published on the Daily Maverick, where you're basically saying to people they have to go out and vote on the 1st of November. You say that it's imperative that people who have the right and the ability to vote on 1 November should do so. How will this help? Wayne, why should people come out in big numbers? Because in your article, you also raise your concern around the lower turnout. That that wouldn't be good if we have a low turnout. But why should people go out and vote, Wayne?
Well, it's not good if they don't turn out. I guess that saying is you get the government that you vote for, but if you don't vote, you can't complain. So I say this to everybody: if you have the ability and you've registered, well, if you haven't registered and you should have registered, that's a sad thing. And normally there's only about 73% of eligible voters have registered to vote, and then sadly, not all of those people pitch up. So the eligible voters are the ones that could have registered and voted is below 50% in local government. That's a sad, sad situation. So what happens now is that we have broken municipalities. Some of them are so broken they cannot be fixed unless billions is pumped in. But we have municipalities with no water, potholed away, refuse isn't collected. Nobody wants to invest in those towns. The housing values go down. And the only reason for that is bad governance. And what happens in the voting period is it gives you the opportunity to change that. And now is the time. So if you don't vote and you can vote, I say this to individuals in that space: you are part of the problem, and you have no right to complain about the potholes and the poor running of your cities. No right at all if you didn't vote. And then we get this pushback: yeah, but why my vote? Why? I mean, one vote doesn't make a difference. Well, if everybody had that attitude and nobody rocked up except the supporters of the worst people to run your towns, then that's what happens. So we've seen municipalities that have been won by a few hundred votes, wards that have been won, and the critical wards that are won on those few hundred votes on a low turnout have very potentially and very often put the wrong people into those positions of power. Whereas 100 extra votes, if people had have got out and voted, would have swung not only that ward's vote into the hands where somebody would have made a difference, but it would have also swung the proportional representative votes potentially into another seat on the other side of the council, because in local government, you've got 50% of the seats are on proportional representative and not on the ward allocation. I don't think a lot of people understand these dynamics. So, it's simple. Every vote counts, and the biggest mistake is made by those who think that they can only do a little, so they do nothing. That is, please, the first point of active citizenry is get out there when you've got an opportunity to make a difference in your town and vote. And even if the party you voted for or the person you voted for didn't get in, that's fine. You at least had your say. And now deal with the next part of that. Become an active citizen after elections. So every 5 years, we shouldn't be waiting. We should be participating through our local community organizations, holding local governments to account, making sure that the money that is spent on the new road, the water pipeline is done properly. And that's where OUTA is playing a lot in this community action network that it's setting up to empower local organized communities, indigenous communities, business forums to play their role in between elections and to make sure that those municipalities spend their money wisely. This is what active citizenry are about, but it starts with voting. You can't not vote.
Now, the former president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, he gave a speech, was it last week, if I'm not mistaken, I think somewhere here in Joburg, where he was saying, basically campaigning. And he says that he admits that the municipalities that most of whom are run by the ANC have been a disaster. That he, things have gone wrong under the ANC. But then again, he still asked people to vote for the ANC. Which is typical of South African politicians. Come vote for me, even though I have a bad record in governance. But my question is this to you, Wayne. The ANC took power in 1994. It's 27 years now of our democracy. Is Mbeki right that the ANC has failed people? Is that your observation, that the ruling party, in many aspects, especially when it comes to municipalities, it's a disaster under the ANC. Is that your
Yeah.
observation as well?
Yes, we talk. We got to be we're an apolitical organization, so we got to put it in this context. The ruling party has been the ANC, and its policies have permeated down to local government, and its conduct has permeated down to local government. So during the Zuma years, when those in power at local government and provincial government look up to their leaders who guide them, and they're plundering away at the top. And the ANC is fed through corruption, and we know that, and they don't pay their bills, so they get services, and they become an enriched government through an enriched political party through its abuse of power. This is a serious matter. And so we have local government trashed because they've learned from the powers that be that it's actually okay to employ your mates and your friends. And we've seen this in local government where, multi-billion rand municipalities have as their CEO somebody who wouldn't qualify as a bookkeeper in business. And businesses are multi-billion rands, and a municipality is a business. It has to be run like a business with good governance, good structures, and good financial hygiene and oversight. So it is so sad to see a ruling party that has got the positions within province, and province has oversight mechanisms and roles to play in local government. When a municipality starts to misspend, and treasury as well, it allocates money to municipalities, and those municipalities do not meet the requirements to get those grants because they don't have even their financial statements, houses in order, they still give the money to those municipalities. And that's what the ruling party has allowed. So if they've allowed this to happen, and they've got the powers to stop it from happening, and they do nothing. I mean, the MEC for OUTA in the Eastern Cape, when the citizens of Makanda took that council to court and won, and had them thrown out. In other words, the municipality had to be put into a state of administration and get rid of that council. Instead of listening to the people and the desperation that they had to take to do that, OUTA goes and defends that illegitimate council and goes and defends those corrupt politicians in that local municipality. Now, that was wrong. That MEC and OUTA in the Eastern Cape should have cheered the citizens on, listened to them, got rid of those council members because the courts had given them that power, and gone and helped fix that town. And so you have a ruling party at provincial level who's also looking away while this plundering and this maladministration is taking place. So I think the message to Thabo Mbeki is, look, we understand you are a leader, and you still are maybe a leader in the ruling party. Well, why should the people trust you this time around? Why should we give you another chance? You've had more than one chance. I think the people have been so patient and so, hanging on to the revolutionary freedom that the ANC bought, but now they've got to deliver, and they should have been delivering, not just through Mandela's years and Mbeki's years, but they've dropped that ball so badly that the time for change is now. We need to send a strong message to politicians. You cannot keep the people who created the problems in charge of finding the solutions. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. Now there is talk. There is talk here, Wayne, about independent candidates, right? Who will sort of emerge, or at least I expected these independent candidates. They're expected to emerge in these municipal elections. How will this thing of independent candidates from now on going forward, not just this election, the local government elections, into 2024 as well, the national election, how are they going to shape the politics of the country, the environment? Is this a new big change for South Africa? Big change for the better?
Well, it's an interesting question, and it's the dynamics are different at local governments to national governments. So let's talk firstly local government. I think there's been this big upsurge at local government level because independent candidates is something that's been allowed and in place for a long time. It works at local government level. The problem is that not many independent candidates have won in the past, and that's because independent candidates have run on their own ticket. So They are less organized. They don't have the funding that to fight the big funding that is pumped into political parties at local government level, and they don't get the proportional representative seats. So what a lot of business associations, community associations in local government have learned now is that at local government level, you can register in just one town. In each town, and that's just what they've been doing, register an entity so that it has the same rights as a political party, and they get the proportional representative seats. So if they win 3 seats in 3 wards in a municipality that's got 10 wards, and they get 30% of the wards, they can get 30% of the proportional representative seats, which makes up the other half of local government and the council. And this is good. And this is where local independent candidates are going. It's forming themselves, organizing themselves. But is it going to work? Well, the jury's out. We're going to see after these elections. We think it is going to be a bit of a game changer in some towns. And what this is actually doing, it's citizens who are saying, listen, we're fed up with politics, the normal politics. We're going to form our own movement. And you'll see that coming now in Makanda and many towns. We're going to register it as a political entity in this town, or an organization that can behave like a political entity, and we're going to stand for these wards. This is citizens getting involved in running their own towns. And we think that when that happens, it's the first sign of good active citizenry. It doesn't stop the abuse necessarily, because what happens now is, are these entities, do they have longevity? Do they have the stamina? Do they have good governance? And what's going to happen in the next by-elections, and then what happens when people cross the floors because of political parties offering them, and this is what happens in local government, is political parties offer them some good juicy seats where they can have some good power, and this is where the deals are struck. So let's see what happens, but I think it is the start of a new norm, something different. It also speaks to coalition politics. In other words, now you've got 3 or 4 or 5 or 20% of the wards in the hands of independents. They have power now, and they can vote with or against certain entities. But this coalition politicking has its downside. It really is difficult to run governments and local governments with this one person. I mean, we've seen it in a number of towns where one person crossed the floor and it gave power to the other party, and suddenly, the mayor's out and the municipal manager's out and new people are put in. You can't run towns like this. You need continuity. But at a national government level, it's a different story. And the electoral reform to allow independents coming in there, government is kicking the can down the road. We were amicus in a case that the courts have ruled that the act has to change to meet the constitutional needs for independent candidates at a national government level. So MPs can be in, and they haven't done anything. They've got less than a year left to fix that. They don't seem to be wanting to, so we have to go to court to go and get them to remind Parliament. They have a duty to bring in this change, this electoral reform, so that we can have stronger governments that are elected by the people, not by political parties in the back rooms that say, okay, we won so many seats and these are your representatives. The people should be saying who those representatives are, not the political parties, because that again is jobs for pals. And that is, again, they just vote like sheep in Parliament. Well, the chief whip says this, so we all go that way. There's no independent thinking, and there's no sense of accountability to the people in this style of in this style of electoral reform. So it needs to be reformed, and let's see what happens. But what this country needs for the next national elections is a new party, because that's where I think the power is. A party with good leaders, with good governance thinking, youth in it, people to come forward and offer an alternative to the current mess that we have, because so many people just do not resonate with what the choices are. And yet there's nothing stopping this country from bringing something new. And I think you're going to see that happening. I speak to a lot of players out there, and this is forming an alternative that brings good governance, growth, dealing with the rot, tackling corruption meaningfully, and bringing about employment, education, health, and security back to the country where it should be. This current ruling government has really dropped the ball on all fronts in the last 12 years or so.
Yeah. Now, are you are you happy with the state of our democracy right now where we are? We are 27 years in now. Um, I guess there has been some successes, some failures, but where are we in our democracy? Do you think our democracy is on track? What troubles you about it? And what makes you happy and optimistic about our democracy?
Well, democracy is more than just having the vote, and that's the big change that we had. But democracy is about giving everybody equal opportunity, and we haven't exercised that. Transformation is supposed to have empowered so many people, entrepreneurship, but all it's done is the policies in place have made a few people extremely wealthy instead of hundreds and thousands of people more wealthier than they are right now. So as I said earlier, more people have slipped into poverty in this new democratic dispensation in the last 12 years than it had in the beginning as we started out on this lovely democratic journey that we have. So democracy is about ensuring that we have more say, and yet we haven't. When it comes to the running of our towns, we don't have a say. When we object, we don't get listened to. When we put forward objections to policies such as the e-toll debacle, where society has said, but there's a process you haven't followed, now we want to challenge you, and they still ignore you, and 10 years later, they have a defunct system that was always going to be defunct. R2, a policy that's going to be defunct. Long distance tolling, where we ask for information that is rightfully ours on these toll concessions, where private companies are making billions of rands profit, and we rightfully ask for the information, and the law says we're entitled to it, but we don't get it because we have an arrogant government. Well, that's not democracy. And so we've got one of the best constitutions, we've got a good law enforcement and judicial system, and yet we have a government that usurps all of this and bullies its people and abuses its power. So democracy in words and good constitutions is one thing. Democracy in action is another thing. And our government has not allowed the democratic processes to be applied freely and firmly and across the country. And as a result, we're a lot poorer. Rehabilitation of mines, people living around mines, the abuse of power of businesses that are connected to government's oversight role in rehabilitation, as we say, in all the good things that should happen, allowing free competition in the aviation industry, instead of plowing billions of taxpayers' money into a failing state entity and Armscor and Denel. This is our taxpayers' money in a democracy. So yes, we can vote, but when a party abuses its position, our democracy is wasted. We can't have that.
But you see, here's what I'm going to say, Wayne. Even the party that you speak of, the party that has mismanaged, that has done all those things that you're highlighting, right? Even the bailouts of failing state-owned enterprises. That party in a democracy can be voted out. South Africa need to wise up and say, enough, we need new people, which is what we have been saying all along. Right? So it doesn't help us to, we can, in a democracy, the voter has the power to make the change. It doesn't help we go and vote for the wrong people and then we complain again. Or we sit at home. This is what we have been saying.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. So you get the government you vote for. It's as simple as that. And yet, sadly, with the choices that we have. So I think this time around in local government, let's see what those independent candidates can do. Go out there, understand what they stand for, get their, what they are mandated to go and do, and unpack their messages to what they're going to do. And let's go and vote. Let's just go and vote tactically, as I said in that article. As Mandla Isaacs was saying, and I think Kaya Sitole in a webinar we had on this, we sometimes get locked into the space that we think, well, the party I want to vote for must tick 100% all my boxes. And that's never going to be the case. So I think Mandla Isaacs said, vote for the least bad. vote for the least bad party, but go out there and vote, so that if the options are there, just say, okay, well, maybe this party doesn't tick all my boxes, but it ticks more boxes than somebody else, or this independent movement. So let me go and vote for them, because it might be a good thing that the party that is going to trash our towns less so than others is the one that needs to be given the chance. You'll never get a party that ticks that will resonate with you 100%. If the one party resonates with you more than another, then go down that line. But beware the populists. Beware the people that promise you everything and that can never deliver it. So governments are only able to do what they can do, not what they often say they can or want to do or will do for you. Don't be swayed by populism. It just doesn't work.
Wayne, we have 3 minutes now. We need to close off, and people will ask, seeing you, they will ask, you know, OUTA was started as an initiative or an organization whose main mission at the time was to fight the ethos. And people will ask, where is OUTA on that now? What's the progress? What's happening with the ethos? Tell us about that, quick.
Yes, so yes, we did. We challenged the government policy, and then we saw that a lot of people got behind us, and we got enough funds to start employing a professional team that went beyond ethos and started challenging government on a number of fronts. So it's a model that's working, a crowdfunded model. But on the ethos front, well done to the citizens for sticking to their guns. Well done for challenging a law by defying it, because this is how the Group Areas Act, the past laws were brought down. The fact that, and those were illegitimate laws anyway in an apartheid government, but the fact that we've got a democratically elected government doesn't mean to say that all their policy making is legitimate, is good. And there's a saying out there that we have a moral obligation to defy laws that are not in the best interest of the people. And the public stood up and defied a law that said, well, the government's going to hold you accountable. And we said, come, bring it on, because we will challenge you and we'll defend every citizen. And we've done that so well that their court case, they dropped to 2.5 years ago. So there's no more summonses going out there. The compliance levels are only there with a few government departments. Not even all government departments are paying. A few companies are paying, but they're actually making money out of charging tolls because they add their fees on. And 80%, 85% of people aren't paying. It's a defunct scheme. And the beauty of it is we sit here today and the government says, yeah, but we're still tolling. And we're saying, well, that's fine, but you're actually not. We control. Citizens control that narrative now, not you. So tolling, they've got one choice left, to make the decision to undo that law and take those cameras down. But we are not paying, and there's nothing they can do about it. They cannot criminally charge you. They cannot blacklist you. They cannot withhold your vehicle licenses and so on. So well done to citizens, and OUTA has been right behind you, and they've got no choice but to pull the plug.
Wayne Duvenage, thank you so much. I will let you go. You are a very busy man. Thank you so much for joining me this week. You are the CEO of the Chief Executive Officer of organization and doing tax abuse. So thank you so much, sir. It's great to see you.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, Phumlani.